we launched on Solana um, November 1st, 2023. So I think it took longer than expected, but I mean, the rest is history.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Solfate podcast, where we chat with founders and builders in the Solana ecosystem. This was a great one today. Nick, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was super good. We had Rick, the founder of Discover, one of the biggest social networks in Web3, I think. It's super interesting. We did get a bit technical. We're dropping some technical bits as we go. Rick, he's a technical founder. You know, it's my favorite kind of people.
For sure.
But yeah, we talked about, like, on one hand, why social on Web3, like why Web3 social, like what's the unique benefit there, like what's the value add that Web3 and blockchain can bring to social, but then also some how should I phrase this, like what's a con of it being on blockchain. TLDR, it's all public by default, so that poses some interesting restrictions in a way, and like how to work around it, and everyone's sort of figuring it out. But yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think even for the non-technical folks, it was a good chat. It was a pretty mellow chat, gets a little bit philosophical, right? About sort of the whys behind some of these things. Overall, it was very interesting to me. Like I definitely came in as someone who is not super big into socials, right? Like I use Twitter and that's about it. And sort of left the chat feeling, oh, okay, I should give Discover a try, but also, you know, maybe there actually is some unique value prop of like, you know, blockchain coexisting with social, which is something that I hadn't really considered before. So lots of interesting things there. And then lastly, you know, he gave some words of motivation, I think, to all builders at the end. I thought were really, really great. So stick around, have a listen. Before we dig in, just a quick shout out to Phantom. Phantom's the preferred wallet of the Solfate ecosystem. We love partnering with Phantom. Also, if you have any dev needs, reach out to me. My dev shop Unboxed is here to help, whether it's, you know, Web3 or whether it's more traditional Web2 stuff. We're always around. And lastly, we don't ask this enough, but we would love to get, you know, like reviews and ratings on whatever podcast.
Yeah, leave us a review.
You know, like that would really help, right? We'd love to reach a wider audience, and if you like the show, please help out. But yeah, let's dig in.
Let's go. Nothing in this podcast is or should be considered financial advice. Any opinions and thoughts expressed are solely those of the individual. They do not represent the opinions of any entity. Enjoy.
It's great to meet you, Rick. We've never met before, but I'm happy to have you on. I'm excited to you know, chat about your product and everything.
Awesome. You too, James. And also, Nick, thanks for setting this up. I know things get lost in DMs so easily.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're happy to have you. It's I gave James a little bit of a rundown of some of the things that we've talked about and like what Discover is and how it sort of works. So I guess for like the listeners, we'll probably start something like this of like, who are you and like what is Discover? Can you give like the elevator pitch for what Discover is?
Yeah, my name is Rick Porter. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a platform called Discover. Discover is a Web3 social network, and our goals for it are to unlock monetization, distribution, and ownership for pretty much everyone as much as possible. Myself, I've been in crypto for 2016 professional. It was my first crypto job. I was doing diamond traceability for De Beers. So we're tracing diamonds from the times they left the mines in Botswana to the time they hit the retailers in Antwerp. And everything was built on Ethereum when, like, at the time, gas prices seemed more realistic for something like that.
That's super interesting. I might want to click into that a little bit further, you know, outside of the episode at some point, because that's not something I'd heard of, and I definitely didn't think that, you know, a non-crypto company was doing that sort of thing in 2016. You know, that's neat.
Yeah, digital twins, man. Like it was. I think that like digital twins go in and out. of like popularity, but it's super interesting stuff. The end result is like, you really couldn't put that much information on chain, and it ended up being a hash. So like we built this distributed network of like Intel SGX secure compute enclaves, and the technology was like extremely fresh at the time, so there wasn't a lot of support, and the only people who really had like public repositories around it, you won't believe it, was Baidu. So that were the people who are actually like kind of like pioneering the and being like the thought leaders and like the open source technology for it. So very bizarre, right?
Wild.
That's pretty cool.
Wild. What was what's sort of the path from there to founding a social based company?
Yeah, I actually had a couple social based products before. Um, the first one that like I actually really appreciated was this one called Fan Backed. And the idea is like, and this is like pre-crypto, not pre-crypto existence, but like before I actually was like super aware this could have been done in crypto. And the idea is like you wanted to finance a movie, TV show, or game, and you would go to your fans and actually start selling like digital assets to them. I mean, this sounds weird, right? Like you
Little
would start selling.
crowdfunding type thing.
Yeah, it would be. So like an example is my favorite one we worked with is a guy named Rob Zombie, and he has a band called White Zombie, but he has a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, they're pretty good
and
movies too. That's cool.
They're intense. Yeah, they're super
Very
intense.
intense.
Yeah, like buckle up. Like I remember being, oh yeah, I can do horror, and I started like watching him, and I was like, damn, this is on a whole level. So we had this platform, and it was like a Patreon style platform, and this is like, right, Patreon. I remember when we were announcing, we were also announcing it, Patreon, and the idea is like we had this like chat where you could like come in and like a little forum like tech where you could like come on, write a comment after you've purchased, or ask questions. And Rob, we onboarded Rob, and he had this like all these really detailed things that he wanted, like high customization. He wanted everything to look and feel different, but like be the aesthetic of the platform, but be his own style. And so like it introduced a lot of new stuff. But like what was interesting was like he'd like be on the movie set and like walk over to like a fake zombie and like pick up its head and be like, okay, I'm selling this right now on Fanback for whatever, a couple $100, and everyone would be like, they jump on the platform right away and like bid on it, and like it was like one of ones. It was one of tens, things like that. So like all the paradigms of like crypto, but not at the time. And then he also sold this thing called like I think it was like the super VIP pass or the forever pass or something like that. But like it was a digital pass that when you got it, you could go to all his shows for free. Well, for the cost of that original pass, I think it was like $5 or $6 grand. And it was a limited edition, and so he would sell them like right on the platform. And like, but he had like tons of these really in-depth social needs. Like, I want to be able to reply but show up as like the creator of this project. I want to have DMs, and I want to be able to like message my fans one-on-one and receive messages from them. I want my own inbox. But he had like really a list of extensive social features. And we just kind of we're like, okay, cool. We'll let you kind of take the roadmap here. And at that moment, it was like all the like interesting engagement with the fans to me was like really exciting. Like how he engaged, how he actually like onboarded folks. And we worked with a lot of different creators at the time. We worked with Slash. We started working with Corey Taylor from Slipknot, and a couple others. But like for him, his way he engaged with his fans to me was like really my first social kick. And I worked at MySpace like really early on, and it was like those were interesting days. But like it was a totally different work environment. It was in Beverly Hills next to the Playboy office. Everyone was shoulder to shoulder because this was late within like MySpace's lifespan. But like you started seeing creators like influencers actually exist on this platform. And it's like, well, why was this person famous? And people would be like, well, they're huge on MySpace. And it was like the one I can remember the most is Tila Tequila. But it was like seeing those kind of like those types of like paradigms of like this just normal human being, like heavy quotes, that just started posting on MySpace and becoming popular. And then you saw like this transition to like how influencers were actually created. But so after doing fan-backed, I was like, I want to take this like same concept and pitch it to institutional banks. So we went to State Street, and State Street was like, yeah, let's do this. And they have like trillions of dollars of AUM. And the pitch was like, what happens if like all the news you got showed up in like a Reddit style feed, but it was sorted and ranked instead of like how people like upvoted. It was sorted and ranked based off of your equities, your public equities, and what those holdings look like. So your news would be relative to what you were holding. And the project kicked off and got a lot of usage out of it like pretty quickly. It was a lot of data, and it was a lot of work working with a bank like State Street. Like so much security involved with every little step we had to do. Like had entire areas where we couldn't even have cell phones, and like as like a group of like entrepreneurs not being able to easily access your cell phone or the internet was like actually like 5x the amount of time it took to do any style of development. Because like let's say you have a question on anything as a software engineer, you have a question, like you just don't Google it. You can't Google. There's like, because you don't get the internet like that. You have to like leave the building and go to a coffee shop and Google your question, memorize it, and then walk back in and like do the work.
Hey there, it's Nick. Quick intermission on the episode. If you're enjoying this episode, drop us a review in whatever podcast app you're already listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. It would really, really help us out. We're trying to grow the show, trying to spread the good word of Solana and all the cool things and builders that are here in the ecosystem. And speaking of YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, we publish all of our episodes there. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us out too. And let's go ahead and get back to the episode.
What year was this roughly?
This is like 2014 or 15, and
that's like, pretty wild that it was that restrictive even by that point, that it was like you can't have internet access when you're writing this code.
Right. Like if you have friends who are at the DoD, right, I think they still can't straight up like Google
still like that all the time in tons of secure locations in the military and DoD.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so it's like you end up in this it's tough, right? But it was cool. It was really fun building the app, like seeing the engagement on it and things like that. But everyone has that concept. I don't think there's a human being who doesn't like appreciate social and sometimes actually think about it and think, wow, how would you build your own Reddit, right? Like I'm sure as any software engineer, it becomes an interesting just question in general. And so I was at Google, and I'd get off work and I'd be like, I kind of miss programming. I miss because most of my day was like a little bit of Go and a lot of management. So I would sit there and be like, I want to learn something new, and everything was Wasm at the time. So I picked up Rust, and like Solana being Rust is just like luck, a lot of luck there, but it was just like everything on Discover just ended up was like this Rust project. And the whole thought was like, okay, it becomes a Wasm module, and this Wasm module is this on chain. And now anybody can interact with this like program that exists inside of a protocol. And we released it 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. 3.5 years ago, we released the mainnet, quote unquote, but the alpha was probably almost 4 years ago. But as soon as I posted it, within a day,
this was the first version of Discover.
Yeah, first version of Discover, and the concept was super simple. It was can Reddit exist on chain? That was the only real question, and we found this network that could you could deploy the Wasm modules to, and you could deploy the front end too, so everything could technically be there. And when the first deployment went out, it was an ugly site, had a lot of issues, but you could post and comment. and you could have like the comment trees. And I remember like that it was a lot of spam, like insane amount of spam, because people were very like, what is this, you know? But there was this one user who was like, hello. And I remember just being like, damn, that's like, it's a kick, you know, you see that, because it felt like authentic. And I remember replying to them, hello. And then they replied like with questions. And at that exact moment, it became like, okay, well, this person has these bugs and this person has these issues. And it would be neat if the users could do that. So it was about like a year of that. And then I was like, oh shoot, like I literally can't spend all my time doing this. I have a full job. So we got to figure out something. And we went and about a year and a half into it, raised money for Discover. It was led by Polychain Capital. And I mean, the rest is kind of history. You know, we've gone through so many ups and downs on the platform. But sometime, man, it was like 2023, summer of 2023, I went over to the New York City Hacker House. And
it's a good hacker house.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was, remember the Red Day? Remember the New York's like Red City Day?
Yeah. I have a bunch of pictures from the New York office, the New York's Solana Foundation New York office. Like we're all like looking out the windows and we're just like, the entire city is on fire. Like what is happening? It was Canada that was on fire, and everything was hitting the city all at once. It was wild.
Oh, that's right. It was Canada. I was like trying to remember, why was the city red?
Yeah.
And yeah, we went to the hacker house, and it was like we just were like looking for. We needed a lot of integrations. That's the only way social, like Web3 social, works. It has to plug in. You can't really like rebuild everything, and you need integrations that like not only onboard users but like reduce friction and all those things. So we were like, look, it's going to take us like 4 to 5 months to do this, but it's a big risk. And it was moved to Solana and like start moving a lot of our major components. And we launched on Solana November 1st, 2023. So I think it took longer than expected, but I mean, the rest is history.
What were you on before Solana?
Yeah, we were on this protocol called the Internet Computer, and it was by a foundation called Definity. And we probably were with them for many years. Like, man, I think I met the original team back in like 2016 when they did one of those like Ethereum based ICOs. I don't know if you guys remember those.
Yeah.
It was like EOS, like 5 others and them. And eventually they took them till, what is it, like 3 years ago when they launched. But the WASM modules and all those things, like a lot of that technology just existed, you know, like WASM was 32-bit. I think it's 64 bits more common, but you got to imagine that's like 32-bit systems, 4 gigabytes of memory. That's a lot of restrictions to work within, but it like eventually it solves itself.
Yeah. I forgot that you said that you were on ICP. I remember it wasn't Solana initially, but I could not remember what it was. Let's one of the things about our show is our audience is definitely leans towards the more technical side. Like you're dropping these technical tidbits all over the place here. So let's dive into it. Can you talk more about like the architecture of like how Discover is actually built? Yeah. Because like you said, like almost every developer has had this sort of thought experiment. Some have put it into practice of, I could build a social media platform, social network. What does it actually look like under the hood? What was your, I guess, sort of like thoughts of building it and how you decided to tackle some of it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, like right now and when it started, it's completely different. Like I'll give you a 1,000-foot view of now. And now when I really think of major systems, I think of our transactional system, which like all data is written to. And it almost works like I would say like a database on steroids. It's got like basic business logic, but it eventually data is persisted within order. And it's a full transactional system, but users are signing everything that is written to Discover meaning posts, comments, upvotes, like changing your username, changing your user settings. Literally everything is a signed transaction by a public and private key that is then persisted to the network and then eventually reaches finality. And the identity system which issues those private keys is a delegated identity system. So there's like the primary transactional system, which all transactions are written to, and then there's the identity system, which sits separately, and that uses delegated identities. So all identities are generated in a secure system, and then that private key never sees the day of light. It'll never leave that system. But what we do is we generate a delegated identity on top of it. And so that delegated identity issues another public and private key, which maps back to the original public key, which can be verified through its private key. And so the reason we did this was that and there's an expiry. And so the idea is like, you can log into Discover. It issues you a new public and private key, which has the capabilities of being mapped back to the original. And if those two keys that are delegated ever get leaked or ever make it to the internet, they expire. So it's not permanent. You haven't permanently lost anything. And since that was the kind of thinking, it's like, man, this is embedded into the browser. It's kind of scary. But like also this identity system allows us to create identities with your biometrics. And there's actually I forget the word for that, but like you're able to do with your fingerprint scanner on the phone, and that'll issue
like a passkey wallet.
Passkeys,
yeah, passkey, and I can't remember the exact name for those biometrics, but basically passkey. And also we have typical wallet logins. We have the ability to log in with your Phantom wallet or your Solflare wallet and Backpack now. And then we also have like email password and Gmail. And I would say 70% of users use Gmail, and the other like 20% use most likely Phantom. And then everything like breaks down in a million different ways from there. But yeah, and then there's like, so those the identity system, our actual transactional system, and then our feed engine is probably another major system. I would argue the feed engine is more complex than both of those systems combined at times. Something we totally did not expect. And then when we originally wrote everything, many years ago, the feed was just part of the transactional system. It was just like, well, I'm going to query data and then show me the by time and most upvoted. And like, and then they got a little bit
the
more
simplest of social algorithms.
Yeah,
show me what's recent. It's the very MySpace approach too. Like every single social media platform these days, they have very complex feed engines of like, what is each individual user going to see based off of, all the assorted data points that you have on a particular user, their interests, who they've interacted with. You're trying to keep them on the platform. And then like the MySpace approach is like, whatever's recent, we don't care. Show it. Let's go. I love the simpler approach.
It was like, it was good. And like, eventually it was like, add your followers, rank them higher, or like communities you follow, rank those higher. And then now the amount of different things it does before it displays a query. I feel like there's like 100 different things it'll decide upon before it even shows you a single post within the feed. And like almost everyone's feed is different, but for like where we're at to where we would like to go is mountains and mountains of work. Like you definitely feel when you show someone, like we have 4 to 5 different feeds on Discover, and all of them use the same feed engine with different inputs. But like the feed engine or the feed that everyone uses is by far the one that has the most amount of like personalization and customization to it. Like it's just, no matter where we move it, people will go find it and just browse that feed only. And so it's become like like when you think about the word feed, like to feed, like to eat, right? So it's like, it's weird, right? Like feed engine to feed to like, you got to feed the users. And if you're feeding them things they don't like, they're obviously not going to stick around. So it's like everyone's palate is different, and you've got to really, really customize. And people don't like following people right away. They don't like just because they like something doesn't mean just because they follow something doesn't mean they like it. Like a lot of people follow friends, but they don't necessarily give a shit about their content. Yeah. So so feed engine is interesting. It takes like, by far, it's like, okay, feeds are slow or feeds are slowing down. We've got to upgrade it. We've got to like, there's something that can be always something that can be optimized, but like you spend a lot of time optimizing it. And then we have like gating engines, which is like, I think the closest paradigm is Matrica for Discord. So like how like you have the ability to gate any community by any NFT or token, and that thing's a beast. Uses like abuses the shit out of simple hash. How about that? It's like, but yeah, there's like when you take that step back, and then there's like the user ranking engines. Those are actually more. They're very quick, but tons of tweaking. You could literally just sit there all day and just tweak these little numbers and.
What goes into like the user ranking engine? Like, what are you ranking them on based off of? Is a particular user likely to be, for lack of a better phrase, like high quality user on the platform, or are you just like the platform in general, or is it specific to an individual, a different user?
Yeah, no, it's basically global, and we do take external inputs. And external inputs can basically help for Sybil, but like it's not always strong indicator. So the goal of the engine is to decide, give us a snapshot of like the overall health of the social graph. Like what is the overall health of our social graph at this point in time? And as like and it was unintentional at the beginning, but that's become kind of like, oh shoot, like you can start seeing that like the ranking in users relative to the global snapshot over all time is starting to drift. So you're seeing like people who are in the top 500 become less active, and then people in the lower like 10,000 posting and commenting more. And just because your rank's low doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad user, but it may mean the overall health of the network is starting to tip in one direction. And you see it, it too. Like you can just browse the site, go through all the posts, go through all the comments, and you're like, there's definitely something missing. But we use about 17 different data points to determine a user's rank. And it's like everything, like your follow ratios, your like ratios, your comment ratios, your how like what is your uniqueness engagement? So like, are you getting a lot of engagement from unique users, or is your engagement coming from the same users? And so it's like a really popular user has huge engagement rates, huge ratios, and huge unique scores. So they're not typically within the same. They're not always addressing the same audience. And I think you could feel that on Twitter too, when you're kind of getting the same likes from the same people. Awesome, that feels good. But also, it might mean you're not growing in followers.
You're getting caught in the algorithm, as people say. Like yep. you only get exposed from the algorithm to the same people over and over and over. So yeah, you're not growing anymore.
Dude, and that sampling is expensive. Like,
oh, I bet. I'm curious I'm curious to hear about like the infrastructure that you run for all of this, because like you're describing all of this and like it's a lot of data analytics, and data analytics can add up fast on infra costs.
Yeah, it's not crazy. I think we're only at about 10,000 $15,000 maybe a month for infrastructure costs. Luckily, we're Rust. And I think that is where it's really saving us. Our TypeScript systems are probably just like maybe a 50% to 100% more expensive, because they take beefier machines, they require more memory.
What, you mean Node.js and JavaScript don't like eat a lot of memory? Well, I'm so surprised,
dude. It's like there's this command, and I've almost memorized it, but it's basically you tell your computer to allow JavaScript to execute over 8 gigabytes of memory, or over 10 gigabytes of memory. Yeah, I forget what the command is, but like that was like
I think it's rm-rf slash
slash JavaScript. Yeah, your home directory there for all JavaScript files. What's funny is like but it, dude. If you ever use JavaScript, you feel it. Like the amount of data it can transform relative to like Rust is it's not even comparable. Like you think, because JavaScript you think nano, or you think milliseconds, right? And then as soon as you start using Rust, like anything over a millisecond means you're like something's broken. So
yeah. I wanna ask a couple maybe less technical questions, because I feel like I don't know social that well, right? Like this seems to be a world that you're very embedded in, and so I'm super curious to understand the value add that you give social by putting it on a blockchain. Like I definitely understand the sort of nerd snipe desire to like, can I put a social media platform on a blockchain? But I'm super curious to see, like, you've clearly found some product market fit over the last few years, and like have some resonance with some folks in the community, and I'm super curious to understand what is the primary driver of that to someone who maybe doesn't get it. Like I'm looking to have that light bulb moment.
Yeah, there's a kumbaya. The kumbaya answer I don't even really love, which is like now it's decentralized and verifiable and traceable. And now, if anybody took down Discover Social Network, the data, anybody could pick up the nodes and operate their own nodes, and the network would never go away. And I think like that's a powerful statement, and I do think there's a lot of truth to it. But I also think like Mastodon, ActivityPub, which is like been around way longer, and they're a federated social. They're federated instead of decentralized. Could make a lot of those arguments at times. But I think for me, when I really look at it, is I really think about like the open and accessible APIs, and the open and an accessible network. And so when that really like gets me is that like now there's a standard protocol or a standard way of actually plugging applications directly within the social that's unopinionated. And when I think about like Reddit, okay, it's a lot easier now to say these things than it was like 3 years ago. But like the argument is like, well, if Reddit ever shut down their API, like what would people actually do? And then Reddit literally like shuts down their API last year, and then opens it up and heavily monetizes it. But we used to say that like as like, hey, this could happen, and they literally did it, which is like shocking. And then the people who actually most likely grew Reddit, which were Reddit is Fun, and I think it was called Apollo, which were the two alternative apps, most likely laid the path for Reddit to be part of like people's mobile phone experience, because there wasn't like this official app. And so they literally shut down those apps. And now you could argue all the different reasons why, but like it should have been accessible still for those apps to exist, and it still should have been possible given the data that still exists. But because of that data is gate kept and sits behind their infrastructure, they could remove accessibility to it, which they also means they could remove the ability to access it through those APIs. And I actually don't think Apollo or Reddit is Fun could have, if given the raw data, could have built something on top of it. It's just too much data. We're talking, millions of posts and comments a day. I can't even imagine you would need 20 XR infrastructure. No, 1,000 XR infrastructure to be able to not only handle all of that, but have a lot of access to that information. And then when you think about really great put together APIs like Discord, where you can build diverse amount of applications on top of, you kind of see that paradigm of there's something within the API, but how do you trust that Discord's API will still remain? And if Discord's API goes away, is there any way to for me to continue building applications on top of it? And the answer is probably not. So for me, when I really take that step back, it's making things open and accessible from a developer and user perspective to allow them to have that freedom of choice with their own experience. And I think and the transparency, I think, and we're not even doing this that well, but how are you giving transparency behind what people are actually seeing in their feeds and what are they receiving within their feeds? How do I know I'm shadow banned? How do I know I'm demoted? How do I know that I'm actually why am I not getting reach? So it's how do you give the users transparency on ways that they can actually solve those problems? But to me, when you back it all out, this actually empowers the creator. And there's one easy example of why, and there's one harder one, but I'll go for the easy one first. The easy one is YouTube creator program. If you're a YouTuber and you want to develop content, you actually have to be within the creator program to monetize it. And from a Web3 perspective, it just seems weird that there's monetization is gatekept. There's no real reason why. So it's and within Web3, there's probably a million sites I can go to, sign up, and become being able to monetize myself as a creator, as a Web3 creator. So
I think there's actually one very specific reason why it's like that. Maybe this is a hot take, maybe it's not, but it's because it costs too much for them. So for YouTube, you have to have 1,000 subscribers and X number of watch time, split either at shorts or with their long form content. And as soon as you hit that, you're still probably only getting paid, best case, more than likely, if you're barely at those thresholds, you're getting paid maybe a couple of dollars a month, if that, based off how they do it. But if they're only sending,
costs are just too high.
Exactly. I think the payment processing costs are too high, which is why they set that minimum bar of if you're at this level, you're basically a break even for their processing costs. I'm not including data infra and all that kind of stuff. I think that's why. Vice with Web3, you have all of these financial efficiencies that have been, they're just accessible, especially on Solana, fraction of a penny to send any amount of value. You don't have those same processing cost fees. Yeah,
not to mention they can accrue that value and claim it when they want to instead of paying to send it.
Yep.
That's interesting. That sort of is another point on top of what you were already saying, Rick, about the benefits of the blockchain.
There's actually
payments aspect.
I totally agree. And there's this actual whole angle that I wasn't aware of until 2 years ago, which is I was at a conference speaking to this person who manages TikTok creators, and it's already it's well, it's super weird and interesting, but I haven't spoke to a lot of these. I mostly spoke to them on the YouTube side, and then within the first couple instances, I tell her what I'm doing, and she's like, "Wow, that's amazing! That's exactly what we need on TikTok." And I'm like, "What does TikTok need with this?" And she tells me this whole story about how all the data within TikTok is gatekept. So if you're a creator and you're trying to figure out how do I get better reach, what are the statistics on people who read this style of content, and what are the numbers on people who actually participate in my genre? And her genre is she sells kitchen appliances is like, it's not the right word, but it's like kitchen gadgets. And so basically her whole thing is like getting her like cooking creators on TikTok to like shill a new gadget, right? And one of them is like this like AI oven, but she says like, I don't have the data, I'm not part of this like TikTok cabal, so I don't have the data on actually like what are the right things to be doing all the time. And there's people who are privy to this information. So this information is gatekept from the general creators, exclusively given to groups of creators, and so they can now exclusively grow faster and better because they have these insights. And so,
like the TikTok platform builders, maintainers, owners, whatever, they're actually giving the data to select few people or like groups of people.
Sounds like it's like I want to say it's like, I don't like foresee it being like, oh, they're just picking up the data and shipping to them, but I'm foreseeing dashboards. Like there's like, here's a dashboard on more detailed information, like pro creator dashboard or something.
Gotcha.
Like
okay.
That, you know? Yeah, so it's like, what are the hashtags trending, or what are the different trends with inside of these genres and categories? So technically, like in Web3, if TikTok was an open protocol, people could like siphon the data off of that open data and derive their own insights and derive their own information. And yeah, so maybe TikTok gatekeeps it. It's super complex, expensive system to run. But if the underlying data powering those dashboards was like freely available, then everyone would technically have access to the same raw information. But now people could have exclusive access to how that raw information is transformed, or how insights come out of that raw information, which I think is like abstractly fair. And so I think like Web3, like sometimes the whole, like even the word Web3 kind of feels like I'm saying something bizarre, or like I'm not even sure what it means at all times. But like, it's like DPen. I feel like you Google what's DPen, and it's like all these projects that come up that you're like, is this even DPen? But like, that's to me, when I think about Web3, I think it's like really about that open and shareable information. And it's like kind of leveling the playing field on giving everyone the same insights. And like, it's similar for trading. Like we all have the same trading information, but maybe people are spending money on enriching it. Like, who are the wallets behind this? What are the bubble maps? But like, we, at the end of the day, we have access to all that same raw information. And I think from social, as how competitive social is, and how sadly or happily important it is becoming to society. I think I was going to say financially too, but like, which is true, like us all having access to the same raw information, to me is a right step in the right direction.
It's interesting. Like as you're talking through this, I'm having this almost philosophical question in my mind about like, is data like a utility? Like, should it be treated like a utility the way that we treat, water and like in most countries you have easy access to certain things because it's like, hey, this is almost viewed as a human right that you have access to it. Maybe not access to the fancy dashboards that someone has to build. Maybe you have to pay for someone to do that, but you have access to the underlying data. You can use that, manipulate it to derive value somehow. And it almost feels like that's what you're positing, is that like the underlying data stream should be available to anyone. And I'm not against that by any means. I just have never really thought of it that way before. And so I'm kind of like working through it real time.
Yeah, same. I'm like, I have one huge wrench that gets thrown into it every time I think about it, is privacy and the right to be forgotten. Right to be forgotten is not a U.S. law. It's a GRDP compliance law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dyslexic, so I think I'm getting one letter.
GDPR, I think. GDPR.
Dyslexia, it'll get you.
Yeah, and like, okay, at first I was like, yeah, I get it, and then we had these users from Vietnam uploading adult content and like engaging heavily with the adult content. And it was not like, it was normie stuff, dude. It was like I feel like if my mom saw it, she'd be like, whatever. But like, they reached out. Some rumors went around saying that like we report people to the government, and like I don't know where this rumor even started, but like they reached out and were like, would you report us to the government? Well, what government, first of all, and like I don't know, would you think I have time for that? But like, let alone like care. And I looked it up. It's actually illegal to create and share adult content in Vietnam. And so now there's like this, if everything's on chain, so like high level, everything's on chain, then I have this huge traceable history that can't be forgotten, and therefore I can't make mistakes. Like, let's say I legitimately, like, accidentally upvoted it, you know, or I legitimately accidentally did X, Y, or Z, or maybe I'm like 13 years old and saying stupid shit online, you know. Does that have to follow me the rest of my life? Yeah, I think that's where it all breaks down in my mind.
Yeah, that's one of the downsides about blockchain is basically all blockchain is public by default, and you know it's inherently has to be verifiable retroactively, both in the moment, because like consensus algorithms and that kind of stuff, but like to like replay a blockchain's ledger and like go through all that, so that way that you can verify everything. Removing a bit of data that has gone through the ledger at some point sort of breaks down what blockchain is and how it works. So that's a really interesting idea.
It's bizarre.
I mean, you have
right?
things like ZK that like can help it, but yeah, oof.
Yeah, it's yeah, we also we that's what when we come to often. So like when we think about our protocol, we have this aspect of private folders, which don't that if you operate a node, you can have your own private folder, and you can control the read and write to those folders. But like, it still raises a lot of questions. There's a lot of trust issues. There's a lot of questions. But like high level, we everything on Discover can be just thought of as a giant like drive. So the whole network's one drive, and within those are folders. Every folder is owned by a user or a group of users, and the role-based access control of accessing those folders is all built within the protocol. So, and you can just, the easiest way to conceptualize this is a Discord. A Discord server is a folder, and then you know how you have like the whole role thing within, if you guys ever use those are just basically role-based access control, and then those have permissions like can read the channel, can write the channel, can mention the channel. So we follow a very similar paradigm. So when you have a sub channel in Discord, it either inherits all the permissions of its parent, or you can decide on special permissions, and we follow a similar permission hierarchy within inside of it. So
interesting. Yeah. What is I guess, if you had to make a quick 30 to 60 second pitch on why someone should use Discover, just like as a regular user, not necessarily a creator, like a big time creator, just like, hey, James, you use Twitter a lot. Like you should come check out Discover because insert here. Like what's the pitch there?
Yeah, for us, it's really growing a collection and growing a new following of completely new social users. You're going to be able to address an audience that's not your traditional Twitter Farcasters like Warpcast, or you're not going to see a traditional like Facebook groups or your Telegram. You're going to see a completely new collection of Web3 users or WebX users. And you're going to be able to engage with an entirely new audience but you're going to actually be able to monetize your following with inside of our platform. And that's a lot of what we focus on.
Nice. Okay. That's enough for me to go try it out. So I'm
James is sold.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't know if I'm sold, but I'm sold on trying the platform out, right? I'm sold on creating a user and seeing like what is the different sort of audience that I can create on Discover. It happens. Like it happens to be a good fit for me because I work in the Web3 space. And so it's like, okay, yeah, it'd be really interesting to have an audience of folks that are all in the Web3 space. Like that automatically creates like an environment that is interesting to me. So I'll be checking it out for sure.
Yeah, dude, excited. Hit me up when you do. Reach is a problem that we still work on, which is like, how do you take a new user and give them reach on a platform that they don't have any followers on, and they're not following anybody. That's like,
That's tough everywhere though. Like I think all social media has a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, and it's like, how do you build that out without it taking years of bootstrapping?
I think that's where Web3 uniquely comes in. When you have a base layer identity of your blockchain wallet, you have, when someone joins a brand new platform, you have all these data points that you can already collect about them from the public information, what tokens they hold, what NFTs they have, maybe someone that they've sent, like an address they've sent direct funds to, like a person-to-person transaction. You can sort of build a quick, rough, like getting started point for a brand new user because of the unique properties of blockchain and Web3. I think it's actually probably the best way to do it because you have like this user is already opted into interacting on chain. So you could sort of collect that.
Interesting. I totally agree. I really think there's these, like I hold these NFT collections and I'm super curious. And we like recommendation engines is like brutal. They're brutal too. But the right recommendation engine, I think, would somehow be able to use your on-chain data to instantly derive who your like friends are with inside of a platform.
Mm-hmm. That would be way cool.
Yeah,
that would be amazing. I actually cannot think. My on-chain identity is fragmented between so many different wallets that like that would be it'd be very challenging. Which, by the way, I was very interested in what you were bringing up about this sort of abstracted identity piece, right? Where you've got this base layer identity that sort of delegates to other wallets. That's fascinating to me. That's something I've thought about before, and I'd love to dig into that another time because I would love all of my wallets sort of tied together into a single identity while maintaining the OPSEC of having separate wallets for different things, Yeah.
It's like the abstract wallet paradigm. Some days I love it, dude. Some days I hate it, but yeah.
There's pros and cons across it. It's so, yeah.
Pros and cons to everything we're building. It's like we all want some magical protocol that sort of like solves everything without introducing new problems. And that doesn't work that way.
It's the fractured assets that piss me off. That's it. There's like, it was genius for the time. I think it still has legs, but you end up in this paradigm where like every app has its own wallet. And eventually you're just like, imagine like you have like 20 wallets in your own home and like you're too lazy to move cash between them. So it's like, okay, I have my wallet with only $40 in it today. You're like, yeah.
No, I totally agree. It's like, I like the idea somehow of there being a master wallet that can do anything, but also having these sort of spun up focused app wallets that so that you can't accidentally get drained for all you're worth kind of thing. I'm not sure how to implement it, but it sounds like you guys have an interesting identity delegation thing that would be fun to talk about. I think before we wrap, I'd love to give you an opportunity to just give a final shill or something to our listeners. Doesn't need to be about Discover, even just like anything that you want to get across, you want to let people know. For reference, it's like our audience tends to be, like Nick said, relatively technical. Of those who aren't technical, they're still builders. They're all folks who are sort of interested in building in this ecosystem. So if, whether it's words of wisdom for them or just, final shill of Discover, go for it.
I feel like I've talked about Discover long enough. I do think if you're a builder, just build. Experiment early and often. Don't be scared to be wrong. Don't care about how right you need to be. Some of the craziest stuff is built in the latest nights with the most amount of issues, and that's sometimes it is the it's like what is it, the solution? It's the solution for now, maybe not for later, but sometimes it's really just making that step one. I don't think it's we live in an era where you can release 1 million times over, and if you have a massively crippling bug that destroys everything, okay, you really may be fucked up, but you can re-release, you can push more code, you can fix more problems, and I think there's that one quote, I forget who said it, but if you're satisfied with it, you almost spent too much time on it. I think it's just release early and often and fail fast, and you'll get where you're going, because and you're gonna learn so much, because I think the biggest is don't underestimate your ability. I think a lot of software engineers underestimate their capabilities and overestimate it, massively overestimate it, and do whatever it takes to meet your own expectations of where you're at, because I think that's where you're going to find exactly what you're looking for. And don't forget about the journey. It's all the end is when the company ends and it's all over. It's it's all about the journey. So keep it going.
I love that.
Beautiful. I love it.
Thank you for the wise words. I think we'll just leave it at that, because that's a great way to wrap it. Thanks so much for being here. It was great chatting with you, Rick. And to the listeners, we'll see y'all next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Later.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Solfate podcast. I hope you liked it. I know we did. We always have a blast recording with our amazing guests. If you've got a moment, please leave us a review in your podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. And I guess it's time to get some more coffee and get back to work.